Okay, we're back. Once you have the sample BChk height established, it's time to drive in all the rest according to this. Now we're viewing the scene at the drill press. Once again, we're working with our table with the cutout, and we've aligned it the same way we did when we were drilling capstans, except it's not as critical. But nonetheless, you want to drive these in fairly square. Now, we're using the drill press as a punch, basically, to drive in the remaining BChks. And we'll get a close-up in a second, but chucked in this drill press is a 1/2 inch oak dowel, and it's extending down maybe 5/16 of an inch. It doesn't matter. The important thing, though, is that it's chucked all the way in so that it can't be pushed in to the chuck any farther. Also, what we see here on the table is the sample BChk. This is a good BChk height, leaning backward too, for checking. Now, the BChks we're going to be driving do not have a bend in them, they're straight. Also, we have a cake of beeswax. Now let's get a bit of a close-up. Okay, there's our oak punch. We have set this to a predetermined depth so that it can't drive down any farther. Set your stop on it. And take your beeswax and just put some on the flute, just spin it like that. Come back a bit. Okay, just beeswax makes them drive better. So ignore my arm, which is going to be in the way here for a second. Okay, just gets a bite. Then line it up a little better. Drive it home. Bend it backwards so it looks like your sample. Don't get too fussy, obviously, but it helps. That's it. It should have been mentioned, if it wasn't already, that the angle of this table is obviously appropriate to driving these BChks straight down. I don't know what this angle is, it doesn't matter. I just picked it up by adjusting the table with a drill bit sticking down as a reference guide, so I could get the bit parallel to the straight BChk, and that's where I stopped the table. Now, if for some reason you need to raise the BChks because you've gotten them too low, and in fact this is how we remove the old ones, just set your keys on a table, put a little block of wood like so, hold your key down, and then use something like this, and you can see that this pulls out very easily, yet you can't pull it out by hand. I'll punch this back down to its original height, the required height, that is. Another thing to keep in mind is that the farther uphill the BChk that you're driving in goes, the deeper it's going to go. So you need to keep in mind that the center point, or whatever sort of alignment that you worked out with the center of the punch, is pretty much the same. So to some extent you can pick that up by how much the back of the key comes off, but generally I take a look to see that I'm punching it in the same place, because if I punched it up here, it would drive in farther than if I punched it off center down here. So let's do another one. And this does bring up the next point I wanted to make. The beeswax is not essential on every one unless you're having trouble driving them. This particular set drives very well, actually without the beeswax, so I haven't been using it on all of them unless I found one that was difficult. Okay, and then tweak it backwards. See how it looks from the back. Now if it still looks too high, even though you've bent it backward, and now the punch won't reach it at all, and you just want to snug that a little bit more, just take a little block of wood and place it underneath, and then smidge it down just a tad. Why not? Now we look good. If you go too far for some reason because you misaligned your punch, right here at the drill press you can take a block of wood like so, and holding the key down firmly you can leverage this up. Now if you can't leverage this up very easily, then you need to go with beeswax. You should be able to leverage up fairly easily, but you should feel some resistance at the same time. Okay, we're swinging here. What we're looking at here is a view inside the action cavity. The action is installed. You can see the new BChks are installed, but they're not really spaced and set to the hammers yet. That will come later. But what we are interested in now is in turning our attention once again to the back action. Now notice you can see the keys lifting the underlevers back there. But notice this one in particular is spaced too far to the right. What we're looking for is a more or less centered position of the underlevers on the back of the key lifting felts, or favored to the right a bit. But dead center or favoring left, no, because remember these actions have to shift to the right, and we don't want to miss picking up the underlever. So make a note of this one with a piece of chalk on the appropriate key, that that particular underlever needs to be papered to the left. Regarding spacing and traveling underlevers, this one is one we determined earlier in the process when we were looking in the key bed that needed to go to the left. In fact, as I eye from the top, it appears that even the hole in this top and the block itself can afford to go left anyway. The first thing to try is to loosen the screw and see if it will slide, because the hole is big in the flange. See if it will slide over, and in this case it does. And at the same time, my levers out here look pretty well spaced, and actually the tops of the blocks look better than they did. So that's one good trick. If that's not enough and it really needs to be papered over, let's say it's got to go to the left, then you loosen the screw, but don't take it all the way out. If it needs to go left in this type of arrangement, you paper the right. So you take a long, thin piece of paper, push it down in, push the flange against the paper, oh, I'll get this sooner or later. Here we go. Tighten the screw. In this case, we wouldn't want to be spacing it left as well, since we're going to allow the paper to do the whole job. And that looks pretty good too. Simply break the paper off like so and look down in and make sure you don't have a little piece hanging on there, which you'll have to clip with a knife. And there we have it. So we'll do these preliminary ones that we picked up earlier and then put the whole system back in and check it with the keyframe and mark the final ones that need to be traveled or spaced left or right by sliding. And there's more! And you thought we were done. About now you're wishing you kept the original back action, right? Actually, this really pays dividends. You need to travel these similar to hammer shanks. Obviously they don't move as far, but you need to watch the holes in the top of the blocks and see if you see one moving funny up and down. If that's the case, you need to rotate the flange, and I'll come around and show you a good way to do that. Right, these were traveling very well actually, but let's pretend that this one was traveling to the left. That is, it was going this way. I don't know which one it was, but here, let's pretend that that was it. Now, what we need to do, if it's traveling left, is rotate the flange to the right. And that will cause this to travel straight up and down. So the way I like to do this, I'll get these out of the way here so I can work and show you, is you loosen this flange. Now try and remember your spacing because you don't want to mess that up. Loosen the flange, and then with another smaller screwdriver, lightly wedge it under there to capture it, and then give it a good tightening. And there we go. Now, this one is actually going to be moving because it was right to begin with. Yeah, and it certainly is. Now it's moving to the right, whereas it was correct earlier. So I'll just loosen the screw and bring it back where it was. But that's the technique. Lastly, and a lot of this is just a little of this, a little of that, and you come up with the best compromise. Excuse me, while I get you dizzy again, is to lean all of the flanges more or less up and put a black cloth, a dark cloth behind them so you can see what's going on. Well, let's do that. And then look for any really weird leaners or spacers or something like that, and then correct those as best you can. Eventually you'll come up with the best compromise of spacing, rotation, and lean, and that's what you'll go with.